It was by far one of the most scariest experiences I've ever had in my life when I stood in front of that woman on the grand piano after she had given me a taste of what she does, teaches at the conservatorium, etc., etc. And I'm going, what the fuck am I doing here? Welcome to the Full Stop Podcast and our first episode of 2021 with Sarah Lawrence from After the Storm, Berenice Smith from Walking Our Shoes, and me, Michael Hughes from Married and Childless. Now, sadly, Sarah couldn't be with us for this recording. We thought it's best to kick the new year off with something inspiring, and our guests, Lisa Kassane and Helen Jones, both do that in their own very special ways.
It says recording in the corner now, so that's probably a good
sign. We're on.
Yay.
It's working. Woohoo! So, Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
I'm joined today on the podcast, of course, by Michael Hughes and by our guests, Lisa and Helen. So, Lisa Kassane, can I make sure I've got your pronunciation of your surname correct there, Lisa?
Yes,
is that right?
That is absolutely correct, yes.
Fabulous. So, Lisa runs the No Mo Book Club, which I love. It's a fantastic idea. And Helen Jones, you run the choir, and you're just I know you from ages back. We've been talking before we pressed the record button about how long we've kind of known each other in dodgy alleyways in Shepherd's Bush, which or to the Fertility Fest. It's not as alarming as everyone thinks. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us today on the podcast. It's fantastic. I'm really looking forward to chatting to you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Oh, it's great. It's fantastic.
An honour, yeah.
So, how have you both been keeping? How's your year been? Do we want to talk about 2020 or just want to scrub it and pretend it didn't happen?
I have to say that 2020 has been the making of the book club. So I unfortunately, as much as I'd like to sort of pretend it hasn't happened, 2020 has been, dare I say, quite positive for me, because if it wasn't for everything that's happened, I may not have had the time or the inclination to get going on everything I'm doing. So yeah, probably unlike many, I'm actually grateful for 2020, I suppose I have to say.
That's fantastic, because it was quite a big thing to kind of launch something and to do that so quickly, I think, and then have that responsiveness as well.
That's it, and it's because of the sort of the first lockdown that we had in March, April, that I just found myself with so much time on my hands, and I was able to think and really get to the bottom of what I needed to do with myself to manage my childlessness and my grief and everything. And all these ideas just came up, and I'd found Gateway around about the same time, Gateway Women, and and it just gave me that really needed space. Had I been working 9 to 5, I don't know that I would have had it. So thank you 2020.
That's fantastic. And Helen, you started off with the choir with people, didn't you? Actually face to face, is that right?
Yeah, it's about just over a year ago that I had this idea to do a vocal project for the childless community, and something that I wanted to do for quite a lot of years, but as you know, it takes time to get to that point. And I've eventually got it together, and we all met in March. By that time, I did actually bring some hand sanitizer with me, even though it wasn't compulsory. And we were all worried about how far apart we should be, even though nothing officially had been said. And then bam, that was the first and last time. But we had a fantastic 3-hour session in Waterloo with about 16 women. We sang some disco tunes. We had a great time. I was absolutely exhausted. I have to say, this is less exhausting online. But yeah, that's how it happened. And I didn't plan at that stage to do anything because no one really knew what was going to happen. So yeah, it's a bit like you, Lisa. It's kind of like the necessity of having to do something and kind of try and make a little bit of a living as well. 2020's been it's been a funny year for everyone in the worst kind of way, but also what comes out of being in a corner. I think the thing is, as a community, I have found we are good at coming out of a corner. when we're in a corner and we have to fight our way out, and that's what we've always done. So in a sense, you know, rather than hanging on and seeing what is going to happen to me, I've kind of acted and gone out there. But it was a process that initially I wasn't open to. And then when I realized that, hey, there is something called Zoom, then it opened doors. But I didn't imagine that, like, nearly a year later we'd be I just didn't imagine what would happen. And as a result, I'm glad, and I finally with my vocal projects got to a place where I'm happy to go forward. Because when you say choir, Berenice, choir can be 3 women singing very loudly and drunkenly in a pub, or it can be something in the Albert Hall with 45 people.
That is true.
Done by Gareth Malone. You know, I really just wanted it to be a vocal project, and it certainly is a vocal project. And I've now got another project that I'll talk to you about later as well, that is really even closer to my heart, connected to this community called Our Healing Voice. And that's really where I was coming from with that. But I didn't want to go in with that. I thought, if I say choir, people will know it's singing. That's enough right now. So it's just developed, really. So yeah, it's been, I couldn't have planned it. Let's put it that way.
I think that's true. I think it's something that I've noticed quite a lot in online in the past year is levels of resilience. We've talked about it quite a bit on the podcast because, of course, we've been affected in that we had a whole kind of plan set up for the year, guests set up, and had to just literally move everything around so that we were relevant and on topic. And within that, of course, we've had different challenges because it's very different for different countries. So when we're talking to people, we have to sort of be aware of those sensitivities, I think, in terms of what other people are facing. I mean, we're recording this before Christmas, but we don't know what's going to happen in the UK when this comes out. It's a period of change. So who knows where we're all going to be and what we're all going to be able to do. But that level of resilience that I think we've all kind of dug a bit deep, but perhaps because they've all been through so much in the time that we've had to come to terms with childlessness and our situation, that we've got perhaps a little bit more in the way of resources to call on. And of course, none of us are shy about being online, because that's ultimately how we've all made our connections. Lisa, you mentioned Gateway Women, of course, and Jodie has been on the podcast lots of times, and in fact is one of the main reasons why we exist. Her encouragement and support to get us to this place has been fantastic. So yeah, we're not afraid sort of going online and going, actually, yeah, I need some help here, and this is the issue that I have. Have you found that you've had that community support, both of you, in terms of the feedback and people being part of your projects?
Oh, completely. So as I said earlier, that I actually only found Gateway Women very early on in 2020. Last year, or 2019, I was fostering for about 9 months, and that came to a crashing halt. And it was in the sort of 6 months after that I found Gateway, and it was a real life changer. It honestly, it changed everything for me. I was in a really horrible, dark place, and I found Gateway, and I found all these women, and you guys are included in that, of course. And I just had this space all of a sudden where I could talk really honestly about what was going on, and I didn't have to fear any judgment. I didn't have to worry about saying the wrong thing, or who might see this, or who might catch on to what I'm saying. And I was able to be honest, probably for the first time ever, maybe. And the community has been a lifesaver for me. Absolutely.
That's fantastic. I remember finding it, oh gosh, would have been, I'm trying to remember how long I've been a member. It's been years.
You've been for a long time.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, we've known each other for a long time. Yeah, we have, because I met you. Gosh, you see, that's the thing. I met you in St Pancras. We've done train stations of London, haven't we? But yeah, that was a long time ago. Yeah, it was, and both you and I must have been there from fairly early on, and I can remember it being an absolute revelation to find something. just people. You know, there were women that were like me. Or if they weren't like me, then you actually could have those conversations and you could learn about other situations. Because I think often, I certainly found that, I think with some of the communities that I've been part of, that you may all be from IVF failure, or you might all be from something, but what you've got in Gateway Women, and so many groups I think out there, we have to mention there's many others. Steph's World Childless Week has a huge list of resources on there of all the different groups that there are. But what is interesting about Gateway Women is that anyone can go in with any kind of situation. So you get that diversity and that information exchange about other people's points of view and their journey, and it's incredibly enlightening. But yeah, Helen, I mean, we've been part of Gateway Women for a long time. I don't know how long.
I joined in 2013, and it was purely by accident. I heard Jodie speaking on a podcast. I didn't even know it wasn't even called a podcast then. It was on a SoundCloud. She'd done Women of the World, and I think she'd only had it going about not even 2 years. And I was just flabbergasted, you know, because as someone that's had a very long journey from the age of, well, from when I was a teenager, I'd totally given up at that point of ever finding, I don't know why, but this is how hard it is to actually find someone else who is even in a remotely similar position to you. And even if they were, you'd never know, because you'd never talk about it, you know. Absolutely. And so when I think about a month later, I went to a meeting in Covent Garden. I'll never forget that day when I walked in, and there must have been about 20 women just standing there. And it was almost like I could imagine that, you know, like a movie, we'd all suddenly converged in this one place, and wow, here we all were. I mean, honestly, it was, I could say you couldn't write the book, but she did write a book. But I mean, honestly, one day someone should make a movie about it, because it is phenomenal the way that it's happened. And when you consider, you know, it's all right us going, oh yeah, I found something now, and people coming saying, yeah, I found something, and yeah, it's amazing they have. But for hundreds of years, nothing. It's like we are the dawn of a new day for people like us, and I feel so passionate about that. You know, that we are part of history for people like us. You know, we're bigger than a tribe. We're a massive sector of society, completely under the radar. And you know, all hail Queen Jodie. I love her to death. And, you know, because that's what it needs. It needs that bravery. And also she had that experience within, you know, she was a writer. You know, you needed to have a certain skill set to be able to push it out there. I used to think to myself years ago, oh, maybe I should have something in the church hall. That was as far as I could get, you know. Just put an advert, put something in the window. Oh, do you have children? If not, come and sit on a creaky old chair and drink a cup of tea with me. I mean, I couldn't. I just thought, no, I'm surviving myself. And it was enough to do that, wasn't it? Until this point where we could
And I think together. You don't always know that you need it until you've got it.
Yeah, definitely agree with that.
Yeah, you don't know that it's missing from your life. I think you found that probably with the Clan of Brothers, Michael, perhaps, that maybe that's in creating something that you didn't know was needed, and then for it's filling a gap you didn't know existed, perhaps.
Yeah, I guess you could put it that way. Yeah, I'd always sort of thought about it would be good for guys to get together, but then you think, how do you get blokes to talk about stuff like this? And then Jodie actually approached me and said, look, maybe you should think about this, Michael. And I did, and it took me about 8 months, I think, to think about it. And now, yeah, we're slowly growing. And so, like you say, it's you don't know you need it until it's there.
Yeah, and it's fantastic that you've done that, because I think it's unique, isn't it? I put the call out on social media, and just to listeners in at large, just if you do know anything that's set up for other demographics, and please let us know, because we've really, I know a lot. I could have got quite a few people on the podcast to talk about different subjects for women. But actually, for different genders, it would be really, really good to get some more stuff going, because I think the Clan of Brothers is probably quite unique.
Yeah, and it's the only one I know of. And also, what comes to mind is a request we had. Well, sorry, a friend of someone transitioning contacted me and said, look, you know, do you accept, you know, people transitioning to a man? I said, well, if this person identifies themselves as childless, then of course we will. I said, I can't speak. We have a set of rules. I can't speak for everyone in the group, of course, but, you know, please, by all means, come in. And again, you know, there's so many facets to this, you know, which is, quite interesting. Haven't seen them come in yet, but
I'm finding this, you know, I was going to say, I'm finding this with through the singing. It's really surprised me. In the beginning, I just thought, okay, it's people who want to sing. But because the singing groups that we have, we do them twice a week. I'm doing one today, actually. They're quite small. So they're always like, it's always like 6 or 7 of us. So we all unmute and we chat. So people have bonded. And I'm really finding a group of women. There's a lot of chronic illness that's connected with the childless community. Obviously, I'm only dealing with women, and that was another thing for me as well, because we were like, what about the men? And I'm like, whoa, how am I going to mix this up? Because, you know, I can't have someone who's just like had a hysterectomy 3 months ago and then she's coming on crying her eyes out. You know what I mean? It's a really sensitive area, so we do need lots of different groups. But I found through doing this online singing, there are women out there who have chronic illness who are not able to get up and go out and stand somewhere and sing a song. The fact that they can be a part of something while relaxing, I'm like, whoa, this is a whole other thing that I never even considered. So I've got women who come who have got chronic illness who, you know, they might be in bed. So, you know, or they might, you know, so they are able to participate. And then we now have another thing. So I know time's getting on. I just want to talk a little bit about the Our Healing Voice chanting circle that I'm running. That's been running for, we've done 6 weeks. We've had over 20 women per week chanting together. These are chants that are in English. And this is something that I wanted to create for the vibrational healing that we get, that I personally have experience of through singing for over 25 years and also going to chanting through yoga and everything. And I wanted to bring something into the childless community, you know, so people can be off camera, they can be lying on the floor, a bit like, you know, like when you do yoga online. So this whole online situation has opened doors. And I had one woman say to me the other day, oh, I really hope that when things go back to normal, that I don't lose this. And I said, well, I'm never going to stop doing this now, because now more than ever I feel I'm providing a service to people who otherwise wouldn't be able to participate. That's what I'm trying to say anyway. You know, it's like it's brought other things in, but yes, there's so many different subgroups and subgroups and subgroups. And if you're only identified in a group, you could say, well, it's only 3 people I know who are like that. Well, that's still a group. That's still important to you. You know, you can't say, oh, because it's not 4,000 people, we're not going to do it. You know, there's group, you know, so there's men and women, and then there's all sorts of gender situations. There's all sorts of, like, you know, the people who are gay. There's, you know, there's people who I don't know, people who've adopted. I mean, I don't even want to get down a list because it's a massive, massive list. But then the chronic illness thing as well is massive. And these are women that are in their 30s. I mean, imagine being, you know, chronically ill and you just can't go anywhere for 3 years, you know, and then having a lifeline of having an online community, people who become your friends. It's amazing through the childless community. I don't think you can even get that you can't get that in the other community of people who have children.
Well, you lack that glue. I think there's a glue that you kind of lack, because the one thing I found, and I think we found really with the podcast and going to things like events like Fertility Fest, is that it's not competitive, because the grief that we all have is so unique and our journeys are so unique. You know, we may have walked a similar path. I mean, there's plenty of people, I think, plenty of women who have been through miscarriages and failed IVF, as I have, but each of us are very different and unique. So you don't have that, I think, that competition isn't there that you sometimes get in the other side, as it were. Lisa, can you tell me a bit more about the book club? Because I know that you've been reading Midnight Library, is that right?
Yes, so the Midnight Library was our November book. I suppose I best give you a bit of history about the book club and how it started.
Tell us a bit more about it,
Yeah.
because that's what dragged me into it, was Midnight Library. So tell us a bit more about it.
So the book club, I have to say, it's very intrinsically linked to Gateway Women, because that's where it started. And it was actually Jodie who approached me. There was a book club subgroup on Gateway that had sort of been around for a while, but obviously Jodie's very busy and she didn't have time to keep it up really to the extent that she would have liked. And I have always been a bookworm. I've always got my head in a book for my whole life. And I realised after sort of coming out of the dark side of the grief of childlessness that I needed something comforting and something familiar. And that thing for me was books. And so I started to think about that and how that might look. And I spoke to Jodie and she said, well, look, there's a subgroup here that's not very active. Do you want to have a look at it? So I did. And I took it on with another Gateway Women person, but she sadly found that it was a bit too triggering for her and she had to step away. So what the idea of the book club is that rather than in a traditional book club you'd maybe have someone from the group would pick a book and then you'd all read it together, it was too dangerous, because as we know there are so many books that get you at the end with that miracle or that, you know, the family focus that we're not looking for. So what I do is I read everything in advance, and then when I suggest a book for the book club, I know that it's either trigger free, or if there are triggers I can tell you what they are, so that you can read it safely, knowing that you're not going to be blindsided, you're not going to be knocked on your ass because suddenly, you know, one character has a baby or whatever. So that's how it started. And then I'm a bit sort of designy, I guess. I've got a little bit of a creative side to me. So I started looking at a website, and I bought a domain name, which I now use. So it's a Gateway Women book club. And I stole the Nomo tag from Jodie with her permission. And that is now also connected to my website. And I've got, you know, Facebook page and a Twitter page and an Instagram page. But what I found is that Gateway is where it all happens. And I think that's because people are safe there. They know that they can talk really openly and really freely about, you know, their thoughts on the book or things that might have triggered them. And no one's going to be there saying, well, as a mother, blah, 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 as you get on Facebook and whatever else. So although it probably doesn't seem that active in the wide world, in the background, I think I've got quite a lot of silent watchers who go to my website to look at what the book of the month is. So that's the format is I've got a book of the month, which I recommend. We talk about that on Gateway Women weekly. And then I've also started reviewing books to sort of highlight triggers in them. So I've got another page on my website that recommends books that might have triggers. And I've got this traffic light system. Sorry, excuse me. So where you might look at a book, for example, there was one I read recently called My Husband's Daughter. And I thought, okay, there's a step parent element there. I'm a step parent. So I'm going to read that book and I'm going to see if they do it justice. And I read it and it was just like alarms, triggers, absolutely everything you possibly couldn't want from a book if you're in the situation we're all in. So I put that on my website because I thought, someone might see that and think, oh, okay, I'm a step parent, I'm going to read that, that might be useful. But actually, it was clearly written by a parent. It was clearly written by a mother. The pro-natalist agenda within it was rife. So it's on my website, but it has got a red trigger warning. So people that might think, okay, I'm ready to take on something a bit more scary, they can have a look at the red ones. But for people that think that I just can't deal with anything baby related or parent related, they can have a look at the green ones or the orange ones. So that's how I kind of organise my reviews. It's all very, very new, as I said to you earlier, Berenice. This has been only a year in the making, so I've got a bit of imposter syndrome, I think.
But it's wonderful. I'm just going to interrupt you to say I look at the website because I'm hoping this is kind of weird things I can tell everyone on the next episode. Hoping that Santa Claus might actually bring me a book subscription. Because I'd like a book subscription. Because like you, Lisa, I love books. If I don't have a book on the go, I'm unhappy, and I've struggled a bit. I have to say, the last sort of year with reading, my attention span's been a bit rubbish. So I've read lots and lots of short stories lately. But it's difficult, like you say, you don't know when something's going to just pop up and you think, oh God, that could be a thing that might be upsetting. And I ummed and ahed, and the reason I'm saying at the Midnight Library is because I follow Matt Haig, the author, on Twitter, and I know he's a parent. I know his children are incredibly important to him in terms of his recovery. And I thought, I don't know, I'm not sure about this, really not so sure about it. But I thought, you'd mentioned it. I had a couple of other people in the community who had mentioned it elsewhere outside of Gateway Women, and I thought, right, I'm going to go for it. And actually, I have read it, and I absolutely, I'm looking at your website at the moment, and I absolutely agree with where you've placed it. It's on an amber warning.
Yeah,
I think that's exactly where it should sit, and it's just fabulous because there is stuff in here. I Finding Henry Appleby, you've written that again, was on my list, mostly because I like the cover, because I'm a designer. I design books and stuff like that. That's my day job, and I thought, oh, does the cover, I like the typography, and because you can't go into a store, we haven't largely been able to go into bookstores, and you can't just have that quick flick through. Just to kind of like, oh, okay, right, that says the keyword in there, I can't deal with that, or whatever. You are relying on online reviews so much, but to have that confidence that somebody else has read it, and I think for you, I actually just wanted to say that I think that's incredible that you do that, and I hope that you have the support you need, because I would imagine reading some of those red trigger books isn't easy for you either.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes, so the Midnight Library, as I said, it's an amber warning because there is definitely some triggering stuff in there. And I won't give any spoilers away, but it's in my review, if you're not sure. But I was sobbing at the end of that book. I was absolutely, I was a complete and utter wreck. I was actually away with my husband. We were having a little weekend away. It was just after the first lockdown in the UK had ended. So we were like, right, let's get away now while we can. And I was sat there and I was reading this book, and I was just a complete sobbing, ugly crying mess. But afterwards, I felt like this weight had lifted, because I felt that Matt Haig had really seen us as a community, and he'd seen that sometimes life doesn't go how you want it to go, and it was that thread running through it that got me eventually, emotionally.
I would agree with that.
I did try and I did approach Matt Haig to see if he'd talk to me, but he's just far too busy and famous, so sadly I couldn't get him on board.
He often comes up here to in Cambridge. We have the literary festival, and we've also got one in Ely. That it's a fantastic indie bookshop called Toppings that everybody needs to go onto their website, because it's an amazing website. And they also have things that used to happen in Ely Cathedral. So you could go to Ely Cathedral, this magnificent building called the Ship of the Fens, and you could sit there and just listen to fantastic authors. And I've been to a couple of ghost story things there as well. And they actually isn't in my house. There's a very old chapel, one of the oldest buildings in Cambridge, and they lit it they put candlelight in it, and then you sit there and you listen to M.R. James ghost stories, because M.R. James studied at the university in Cambridge. So you're sitting there listening to something that's basically set a mile away from your house, thinking, oh my God, I'm absolutely terrified now. This is really quite unpleasant. But yeah, Matt Haig's been to a few things like that, I think, with the previous books. So it's my intention, if he ever turns up and we all get together again, that I'm just going to literally just stand there and make a complete tit of myself and go, hey, love the Midnight Library. And I'll tell him who you are. I will tell him who you are. I promise.
Send him my way.
Well, I'll just say I'm you.
Talking of fangirling, I know that you share this with me, Berenice, is his Dark Materials books by Philip Pullman, and obviously he's based in Oxford, so I don't know if that's like a little bit of a rival for you in Cambridge.
I think only if you're educated enough to go to Cambridge University. I've been to one of them, but it wasn't the university; it was the other one. But yeah, I was just like. But I just want to say that the whole thing about the reading there, because I'm sure I've mentioned it on the podcast. I know Michael and Sarah both know this, but when I was going through IVF, I did an Open University degree in English literature.
Oh.
Because I didn't intend to do it. I thought, because I worked with books and stuff like that, and I was in publishing at the time, I thought, maybe I ought to just be a bit educated about this, and actually go and learn a bit more about books. And that's what I ended up doing. And I ended up going to this exam. There's only one exam in the degree, and I thought, well, I'm in here now, I might as well carry on to the end and graduate. And in fact, I met quite a few people on the degree who also were childless or child-free. And we all got to be quite good friends. In fact, I'm in touch with quite a lot of them still after all these years. And I think I graduated in about 2011 or something like that. It was, again, at Ely Cathedral. It was lovely. But I found that helped so much for me, the love of reading, but also the enjoyment of just discovering something new. But even if I hadn't graduated with anything particularly good, the fact that I actually managed to graduate with actually a very good degree itself was a miracle, because I focused my mind, that I felt that my brain was at least achieving something when the rest of me just couldn't do anything. It's a bit of an extreme way to do it. I then did a master's. I wouldn't do that either. Again, it's extreme therapy, and I don't agree with any of that. But the fact is, just picking up a book and being able to do something is just so rewarding. But I mean, hats off to both you and to Helen for actually finding something and identifying a need and being able to do that. And it's amazing. I just think that it's been so interesting and so rewarding seeing this grow. And your website's amazing, Lisa. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And one thing that you also touched on, Berenice, is that sometimes your concentration levels, they dip and they ebb because of childlessness and grief and all of that. And one thing I've learned from the community is that sometimes people refuse to pick up a book, not just because of the potential triggers, but because they just can't. They don't have the headspace. And you said about reading short stories. So one thing I'm actively looking for at the moment is more short novels and short stories that meet both criteria, so that they're short and easy to read, but they also don't have these miracles in them. And that's proving to be very challenging, as I'm sure you can imagine, but it's something that we need. And my whole motivation is, I love reading so much. It's such a huge part of my identity. The thought of women sort of turning away from reading, and men turning away from reading and that meaningfulness, it really upsets me to think that people are not reading because of the triggers and the pronatalism in books. And I just want to give people the confidence back to pick up a book and get back into it, because it's so important to me and to so many people.
Wonderful. That is fantastic. I will have to have a think about that, because I've got quite a few short story things around here. I've got books like you. I've got books everywhere. I mean, they're behind me here. They're all my design books that I have, and then I've got bookcases all over the house and books on the floor. It's crazy, and I can't. I struggle to part with them. I thought at the beginning of lockdown what I thought I would do, because I've got a couple of them in the city here, community libraries. There's things like converted phone boxes, stuff like that. There's someone near to us, and she's moved away, unfortunately, but she had an old rabbit hutch in her front garden with books in, and you could just simply go in and you could just donate books and you could take books, and it was completely free. And she just had this, and I thought, oh, that's a good idea. And then my husband pointed out to me that, could you actually get rid of a book? And I'd be like, no, I would struggle to do that. And he said, you'd be out there. If you put it in the front garden, he said, you'd be out there and you'd be kind of like, no! Don't take that book.
I actually purged quite a lot of my books as part of my after I'd kind of accepted my childlessness. I thought, well, okay, now I haven't got anyone to pass my books down to. What's the point of having them? And I went through this whole horrible time where I was just like, no, I don't want them in my house. I want them gone. I'm going to give them all to charity. I gave all of my Sweet Valley High books to my niece. Anyone who knows what Sweet Valley High is, kudos. And so all I've got now left is the ones that are really, really special. So I've got my Northern Lights, I've got my all my Nomo Book Club books, I've kept all of those, and just the ones that are really special to me. But my bookshelves are bare compared to what they were 2 years ago.
Did you find that cathartic? Was it?
I did, yeah, because it was accepting that I wasn't going to be passing those on to anyone. And I wanted to get some enjoyment out of them, so I passed them on to. I didn't take them to charity shops, actually, because I heard that they pulp them, and that gave me the heebie-jeebies, so I gave them to friends and family and
Yeah.
and community groups rather than charity shops.
I used to work for Penguin, and we used to have book sales there. So they used to have these great big off stock things, overstock, I suppose, and you get some really, really, really good stuff. And they've all got a stamp on the front, which means you can't resale them because there's nothing generally wrong with them. I've got some beautiful things, some lovely stuff, and they used to load the books up about a week before the book sale started, and it was like the highlight. They had 4 a year, and it was the highlight. There's the reason that everyone, one of the many staff benefits that they used to have, they don't anymore. But and I don't work there anyway, so no. But they were just amazing, and you could literally for 30 quid you could just fill the boot of your car up, and I used to literally just try and get the car there that day. But I did do it by train once, and I had to kind of get some help because I had to get back to Cambridge with these books, and I kept thinking, I've got to just do it in stages. But I thought, I can't leave them here. I've got to get them home because they're all just so important. And I did that around the time. The last one that I did was around the time of probably my one of the last cycles of IVF, and I can remember them setting the books up before I went in for treatment, and then when I came out, I think I came back probably a little earlier than I should have done, specifically for the book sale from the embryo transfer. Yeah, that's what I just was. I'm losing the lingo slowly. I'm trying to forget the words. See, words are so important when you're looking at all of this, isn't it? It's all bizarre, isn't it? But I can remember some of the books around that time. I associate that. I've got a beautiful box set, limited edition of William Travers' short stories. And I'm thinking whether William Travers got anything triggering in it. And I suspect he probably has. But I had to go out and buy the paperback one because I didn't dare unwrap the actual box set one. I didn't want to do it. I want to go into the wrapper. So it's still sat there in its wrapper, all beautiful on the shelf. But I associate it with that time. Sometimes I'm probably going to have to get rid of it for that reason. But I can't take it to a charity shop because we're legally not allowed to, because they can't resell it. So I'm like, what the hell do I do with this thing? All these books with all these stickers on in my house. But books have so much meaning because they're so visual and so tactile.
I have a box in my attic, which I call the crazy box, which is whilst we were trying to conceive. And even before that, I had, whenever I would see a book that I wanted to share with my child, I would buy it and I would put it away ready for when that time came. So I've got a really gorgeous board book of the Jabberwocky poem from Alice in Wonderland. I've got a gorgeous gold inlaid version of Hans Christian Andersen's Tales. And they're all just in a box in my loft, and I can't do anything with them at the moment. I can't even open the box. I'm not there. Maybe one day I will. Maybe I'll pass them on to sort of extended family. And it's just a box of things that I can't address.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I've still got all of my IVF stuff in the loft, and I can't get rid of it. And almost in a way, I kind of almost want someone to sort of uncover it so that they understand something about me. So it's there still.
Yeah.
Because
if someone uncovered my... Sorry, go on.
It's part of our makeup. It's part of who we are.
That's it.
Yeah. It may not be.
It's interesting. It's interesting, actually, you're talking about triggers, because actually what I've found is, since we've been singing, there's so many songs that we can't sing because of
I was going to just ask you that, Helen. I was going to say, because you must have the same issues, really, as Lisa in terms of picking out lyrics. That must be quite...
Use the word baby in songs is phenomenal. But mostly for reasons not as, and not as babies, but just as a love reference, obviously. But I mean, it's amazing how, you think, oh, I'm just going to do this, or I'm just going to do that. And then you look and then you just find that there's, I mean, the other thing is as well, like even if you look at anything classical around Christmas, well, of course, Christmas is all like mother and child.
Yeah.
And then when you look in history about, you look for any music, it's all very much related where women are referenced within this framework. So I think coming from a creative field, having things that relate to us as a community are very, very important. When I mean, in the chants, part of the reason that I've written chants for us, they're like positive affirmations, are because, you know, a lot of the Sanskrit chants, you know, they reference things that could be triggering, and I don't want people to have to deal with that. I want people to just take the positives, and you know, really like focus and meditate on those things and take them in and nourish them, because it's all about the energies that we consume. We don't want to be consuming energies that are not helping us, and not helping us repair, and not helping us build. We want to be taking things in and breathing these things through our system, so that we can literally help ourselves to regenerate on a physical and mental level. Do you know what I mean?
I think
So,
I think, Helen, what I've noticed as well, my love of books, it sort of translates into a love of words, I suppose, because I often find that when I'm listening to particular songs, depending on my mood, so like Bastille, for example, they sing a lot about grief. And when I'm feeling really in my grief, I put on Bastille, because they talk about loss and grief and death and everything, but they do it with such a pop sort of upbeat background that it almost pulls me out of it, I suppose. And like this morning before this podcast, I was feeling a little bit nervous about being recorded and everything, so I chucked on a load of Lily Allen and Katy Perry, and then I was talking to my husband about how meaningful the words were, and then I realized, but they're both parents, they're both mothers. I don't know if they were when they wrote the songs, but I just found that I speak particular words and particular songs when I'm feeling a certain way.
I couldn't listen to any music.
Well, I have to say, with music, I was just going to say, that's interesting. I often listen to music that doesn't have lyrics, and I would definitely say, I mean, I've been asked quite a lot about this, and there's a lot of research been done into sound healing, because what really we're doing here is sound healing. So there's a lot of research been done into it, into the rhythms, into the frequencies. And I would say, you know, to anyone kind of like struggling with grief, I mean, really go back to natural music, crystal healing bowls, rhythms, shamanic drumming, that kind of thing. You don't want to go into necessarily, you know, your old record collection. Sorry, I know you're probably not as old as we are.
I've got a record collection. I love my record collection.
I've got record collections. Oh yeah, vinyl.
You don't necessarily want to go into that record, you know, the classic Bridget Jones All By Myself. I mean, we really don't want to be going there, people.
Absolutely,
you know, we want to be. And the thing is, as well, of course, you know, we have to realize that we're all creative beings. We don't need to listen to other people's songs. We can write our own songs. You know, we can say, what do we have in our head? You know, we can create mantras, and we can set them to music, and we can literally breathe through those. There's so much that we can do in the world of supportive healing to help ourselves through ourselves. And I think what we're trying to do through our healing voice is to bring that through. And it would actually, Lisa, I'd really like to talk to you maybe another time about anything that you might have read and lines that might have really resonated with you. Because if there's things that I can take from books that really touch on the healing power that we can use through our community, I'd be really interested in setting that to a melody, and you know, the chanting that you can do with that, the repetition. I mean, people have come away from it saying, I feel amazing after this, I've had a fantastic night's sleep. So, you know, so sometimes we can absorb as much as we can through talking and through reading, but when we're physically breathing it through our system and we're actually reciting it, that's a deeply, deeply powerful, transformative process that can really help to support our healing. So this is really kind of where I'm coming from. I want people to change it, because people talk about singing. Okay, singing, yes, it is, and I've been through massive transformations with the power of song and the power of music. We all know how much music influences our moods. That's the starting point. We can all relate to that, but on a deeper level than that, there are things that we can do that can actively help us, you know. So I want to be having workshops around this. I want to be having a festival around this, you know, and anything that comes from the creative field, I feel is something that we are ready as a community to now build on. So there are places we can say, I'm going to go and do this, I'm going to go and do that. But actually, if we come together and we use all these creative forces together, this is a way to really, really push forward and change the way that we not only live our lives, but the way that we feel about ourselves and the way we feel that we can go forward as a society, as a childless society. So yeah, the creative part, I feel, can only enhance the feeling of community, but we can physically use that to kind of bring ourselves forward. So I just wanted to, because it's always like we're referring to what mainstream society has written. It's like we have things to say, and we have creativity to offer, and this has not been available before. You know, so this is new creativity. I mean, there will be a time, you know, where Berenice is, I mean, people have already written books about their own stories, but there will be a time, I'm sure, where Berenice is like designing book covers
for me, maybe
about creativity. Yeah, for you.
I already have. So yeah, it's happening already. I mean, I think that's the thing is that I've noticed one of the areas that I do, because I cover websites and books and branding, all sorts of things, is that actually I do have a little growing little community of clients who have found me because I'm childless, and I don't necessarily mention it in relation to my work, but it's been interesting because I stayed away from it. I kept it all very apart because I do a lot of children's books. So, and I love working on children's books, and it's an area that I've done since forever. But I had one incident where someone didn't want to work with me because I wasn't a mother, and it knocked my confidence, despite the fact that I've got 20 years of design experience. I've got a master's in graphic design and typography. It's what I do. I live, eat and breathe it. And for whatever reason, bad day, bad time, she said, do I have enough experience? Could I do some pitch work for her? Could I just do a chapter for nothing? And then I thought, hang on, get your balls back, girl, because no, I don't do pitch work. You know, if you look at my portfolio, there is enough stuff in there for anyone to get the idea that I know what I'm doing. But it knocked me, and I thought, oh, maybe I ought to keep all of this apart. And I did. I didn't mention it at all. And it was only through the last couple of years I've belonged to a business group called Drive the Network, who are mixed demographic. And it's given me much more confidence in other people, because I know that there are a couple of people who were in that group who listened to this podcast, who encouraged me to work with podcasts. They're parents. They're all mothers, and they are around and they do that. And it was like meeting in the middle, but also not being scared to share what we know, because actually it can make and inform other people and other networks.
Absolutely.
Although I don't talk about it. Yeah. No, they don't.
They don't know. If you don't tell them, they don't know.
And exactly,
you know,
I think also you see it from the other side, because I was certainly on calls with them. They had weekly or daily actually coffee mornings at the beginning of lockdown to keep us all going, because they're all running a business and trying somehow to run a business. And of course, many of them had kids at home. They were trying to homeschool. And God, I can't imagine how difficult that must be if you're trying to work for your clients and you're trying to do that. And maybe you've got your other half who's also working from home for his employer, who's putting the thumb screws on him because, of course, they're not sure about if people can be accountable during lockdown working from home. All of those situations that happen. So it's meeting in the middle. But also, I think what I learned from that episode with me and this person was that they're not the people I want to work for. They don't. And I've done branding work for people, because the podcast website as well is me too, and what we do here. But I've done some branding work, I've done some book design, I've done lots of creative stuff. And I think people are starting to reach out in our networks. And of course, in Gateway Women, there's the business network as well, that's been set up too. So there's lots of little subsets of groups where I think we're starting to perhaps look at maybe what other demographics are doing. What's happening, I think, in parental groups, where you have business groups, There's certainly a few Pacific podcasts for parenting out there,
Yeah.
I've noticed.
Yeah.
But, you know, you kind of think, okay, well, we can do that too. There's enough of us now as an online
Yes.
community, because perhaps of lockdown, where we've all begun to sort of talk to each other and
Connect.
say, okay, now,
Yeah.
okay, I've got this idea and I need some help with that, and can you do that for me? You know, again, like with the podcast, people can contact us and say, actually, I'd like to do a podcast. Well, yeah, okay, let us, you know, talk to us, because we've got stuff we can share. I wouldn't say that we're pros, but we can certainly explain what we do and how we've done it, because there's information
and this is the other thing,
share.
Berenice, pro situation, this imposter thing.
Yeah.
There are no, you know, it's, you know, we're in a category here whereby there is no one that we can look to. We are those people. That's what I'm talking about, the creativity within us. This is like, we are creating this. So, you know, it's like, there's people like Jodie who started, and there's several people like that, you know, and Jodie's helped me so much in getting these vocal projects off the ground, because I mean, I couldn't have done it if it wasn't from her, because obviously most of the people that come are from Gateway, although I have got people from Instagram and other sources. People are slowly coming in, but the thing is, you know, we are now like a little army or a bank of people. We are a little society within ourselves, and we have this creative ability, and I wish people would have more faith in their creative ability. And people just say things like, oh, I'm not that creative. Elisa, you said, oh, I might be a little bit creative. Well, I would say to you, as someone who is a singer-songwriter, you are massively creative, and you are using your creativity for other people. And creativity is about serving. It's not about going, oh, I've just made this for me. It's about saying, here is my gift. I am taking this, and I'm not embarrassed or ashamed to show you what this is. It's about saying, it might have a few mistakes in it, but this is my humanity. This is my vulnerability. And this is ultimately what will connect with you, for you to accept me, and for you to maybe look more at what I do and maybe involved in what I do. So I think the power of creativity comes from our resilience. It comes from having to come out of a corner, having to fight to survive. You know, not just to be accepted by mainstream society, but just to live in this world is very, very tough. And it took me years and years and years to come to that place. And I would hate to think now that, having all of us reach this place, that other generations behind us have to suffer so much before they get to this point of thinking, wow, I'm acceptable, I'm good enough, there is a place for me. And we're creating that. And I think it's fabulous. It's fabulous what everyone's doing to lift us as a society to that level. And I truly believe we are a society. And please, men, can you hurry up? And
Michael's doing his best. He gets this thing, you see. There's this thing that happens once a month, Helen, where we go, podcast, you know, and then we say to him, edit the podcast, Michael. And then occasionally I drop him an email and go, could you just write me some words like I did this month? Mike, I need some words for the newsletter. You know, damn women.
Which is a good segue for me. It's a good segue for me to get in here.
Go on then.
Okay, I've got a question for you, Helen.
Go on.
It's around your singing group. Okay, so I know from firsthand how daunting it is to try and, you know, do that. So can you take us through how, and, you know, we're talking about a community that have built walls around themselves, and, you know, they isolate themselves. And so, you know, they're going to be especially daunted with trying to sing in front of other people. So for those out there that are interested, what is your process to make them comfortable? What is the process to get them to their full potential?
Okay.
Because they'll be shitting themselves.
Well, this is the thing, right? I have to have a quick technical update with you now. There is no platform out there that allows people to be heard together singing. A bit like we have to take our time talking, it's the same with singing. So people are very confused by this, because when you look at adverts on TV, they show choirs singing together, don't they? That's a result of some poor guy sitting in an editing suite, cut and pasting for weeks and weeks and weeks on end after people have recorded their little bit in their phone. Okay. So basically when people come and sing together, they're not hearing each other. So this is why I had to adapt the whole situation. And this is why I didn't want to do it online initially. What I've done is I've made these singing sessions. I'm teaching people to sing, basically. Okay. So you can be a diva in your own lunchtime, in your kitchen or in your workshop or wherever you are.
In your car.
Now, in your car. So in the beginning, I thought, oh, this is going to be awful. People are just going on about, oh, yes, I want to sing in harmony and I've been in a choir. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And actually, this isn't possible. And there is a woman called Laura Curtis, who is a choral singer, who next year is doing a study on community singing. She's part of Gateway, and she's going to study our project, right? This is a paid, proper study on community singing. So it's very, very exciting. So what I've had to do is mute people, and then we learn songs together, and then sometimes I'll unmute them and I'll say, would anyone like to sing on their own? And then they will sing on their own, but it's not necessary for anyone to hear you. Now this has ended up being something that I thought was going to be a problem. It's ended up being fantastic because people are telling me, oh, this is amazing. I can completely let loose on my own. No one can hear me. It's actually turning out to be a brilliant way to learn to sing. So we do amazing songs. We do a song every week. And then at the moment, we're like just going through our repertoire, but they don't have to worry. We have people that have never sung before. And we have people that are great singers that have sung for years and years and years. But the one thing they don't have to worry about is being heard. Okay. Now, some other people might say, well, what's the point of going and singing if you can't hear each other? The point is that the community is coming out of it. So the community is pushing forward. Friendships are being made. Bonds are being made. When we do unmute and hear each other sing, the support from everyone else is, yeah, great. Everyone claps. You've been fantastic. That's amazing. They're coming to, and one day we will get together in the real world and we will all sing together and we'll all have this lovely bank of songs that we all know. But I know that people are terrified about singing. And the thing about trauma, and childlessness is trauma, okay, is that what happens is the voice gets pushed down and our throats actually physically contract. So the reason that singing and using your vocal ability is so good for you is that it opens you up. It provides a massive release. It can provide a massive emotional releases, and basically give you your confidence back and improve your sense of identity, you know, because when you feel that you can't voice yourself, I mean, we're all very vocal here, but a lot of people aren't, you know, and we might not have been as vocal a few years ago, a few decades ago. So, oh my God, Michael, all I can say is singing and vocal work is such a massive, massive subject, but I think everyone should sing. Everyone can sing. And if you can't, I will teach you. I will teach you to sing. I will make you, you know, don't worry about being in a choir and just knowing your 2 lines at the end. I will teach you to sing a whole Broadway number if you want, and you will feel fantastic. And that's what we want. We want people to be confident and happy.
Yeah, I do not disagree with you, Helen. I've taken singing lessons myself, and I know how I feel when I've had those.
There's lots of stuff on the very first episode. Was it the first episode, Meet the Presenters, or one of the first ones, when and Michael shares a bit about his singing and that, just if anyone wants to go way back to the beginning of the podcast. There's a whole conversation.
It was by far one of the most scariest experiences I've ever had in my life when I stood in front of that woman on the grand piano. After she had given me a taste of what she does, teaches at the conservatorium, etc., and I'm going, what the fuck am I doing here? What the It was the scariest thing I've ever done.
But rewarding, yeah?
By far. And I've done some scary shit.
How do you feel now, though? If I asked you to sing now, how would you feel? If I said to you, let's just sing, I don't know, anything. Well, how would you feel? How would you feel if I asked you to sing now? Would you think, yeah, I can do that and I wouldn't care? Or would you think, oh, would you kind of feel this kind of bam, bam, bam in your chest, you know. I mean, because the thing is, when people associate, what I'm trying to do is bridge the gap between performance and healing, because in music we have the kind of like, you know, the competitive singing arena, okay, and then on the other side we have the kind of kirtan chanting and the kind of humming and all this vibrational sound healing, and never the twain shall meet. What I'm trying to do is put those two together, and so to create, so that you're creating healing through your natural voice. But then at the same time, you know, if you want to go over and sing a crazy mad song, you can do that as well. And hopefully between those two, you know, you can kind of find that you're making progress.
Lisa, can I just ask the book club, so if people want to join and be part of the book group, are they best to go to your website? Is that a good place to start for people?
Yeah, I think the website is a bit of a this is what we're all about, and then sort of join in however you feel, really. So it's got links to all my different social media platforms. As I said before, I think a lot of my members, and I call them that, members, because everyone's part of this community, I think they're silent and they're looking for recommendations, but they don't necessarily need to join in or contribute, which is absolutely fine. You know, I'm not looking for likes on Instagram. I'm not looking for followers or anything like that. I just want people to have access to this information. And looking at my my page hits, I can see that there's a lot of people that are going to the website that aren't necessarily joining the Facebook group or following me on Twitter. And that's fine, because I think people, they don't necessarily want to publicly talk about their childlessness or admit to their childlessness, or, you know, openly be part of something that recognizes childlessness, and that's perfectly okay. But the other thing that I want to do with the book club is to sort of to show parents and mothers and fathers that we exist, and that happy endings don't have to end with a baby. That in fact, that's probably a good time to talk about the January book,
which by the time I wanted to ask you. Yes. Yeah. What is it?
So the January book I'm very, very excited about, because it's by an author called Alexandra Potter, and the book is called Confessions of a 40-something Fuck Up. And the fuck is
I'm
obviously
asterisk
out, so if you search for that, you might not find it straight away. But the thing that's so wonderful about this is that and I hope she doesn't mind me saying this, but Alexandra is a childless woman herself, and she has previously written romance books, and she's got a very good following and lots of romance things that she's done before. And this is her first book where she's really addressed the childlessness issue, and it follows a character called Nell, who is in her 40s, never married, never had children, and she's just basically going through life trying her best to be happy. And she lives in London, so that kind of resonated with me, because although I don't live in London now, I grew up there. So there's lots of relatable things in that. But also I've spoken to Alexandra myself, and she's part of our tribe. She knows what it's like, she gets it, and she's written about it. And honestly, she is someone I aspire to, because I've got a novel inside me, I think, somewhere, and one day I'll write it, I hope, and Berenice will design the cover. And but this is the book that I hope it's a perfect New Year book, because part of it as well is her talking about her New Year's resolutions, and how they don't have to be really tangible things like I'm going to lose this amount of weight, I'm going to go to the gym every day. Actually, sometimes it's just I'm going to get up today, I'm going to go to work today, I'm going to do something that is just perfectly normal and fine. And she's childless and she's not particularly happy about it, and that's it. And it's just a lovely, hilarious, wonderful book for the new year for our community. And I think that and actually at Gateway Women, when we have our Zoom chat in January, Alexandra will be joining us.
Oh, how wonderful! Exciting! That is fantastic. Well done, Lisa. That's a real coup. And I have seen that book, and I have looked at the reviews for it, and it was something I wanted to ask you about, and I wondered if it might be one of your books. So that's fantastic. Yes. Yeah, I can't wait. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be reading that, because I need some more reading material over the Christmas break. Sure, absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you so very much, both of you, for joining us today. On the show notes, there will be all of the information that you've both sent to me about your vocal projects, Helen, and also Lisa's book club as well, the Nomo Book Club. and all of the details about how to find out more about the Full Stop podcast and what's coming up as well in the next year for us. We've got all sorts of stuff underway with our episodes. We've got a plan of sorts for the rest of the year, but as ever, everyone's invited to go onto the website to find out more information. If you have any ideas about episodes for the podcast, then please do let us know. If you would like to be a guest and join us, then please also get in touch. All the information and the email address and contact details are on thefullstoppod.com. I think this is a conversation for something you two are going to have to explore at some point. Lisa,
Helen, remember the time difference. So don't be, because I know what you're going to do. You'll be messaging me now. Remember the time difference, all right?
You will be.
I could be up at 4 a.m. chanting. Listen.
Oh, can you really? I remember what you said when we started this podcast.